All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the 215 Festival, Bottomless Brunch with Lanternfish Press. I am Anju Triohan, one of the programming coordinators for this year's festival, and we are so excited that you've joined us on this gorgeous Saturday. Before we get into the event, I want to take a moment and just thank our sponsors, Rutgers Camden MFA Creative Writing Program, Lanternfish Press, and the Stables. The festival would not be possible without their support. For all those in the audience, just want to share, you do have the option to access closed captioning during the event if you would like. And please feel free to comment and share your thoughts during the chat, in the chat during the event. This is Bottomless Brunch. We hope that we hear from each of you. It'd be fun. And also, if you have any questions or if you want to ask the panelists something specifically during the event, you can utilize our QA button. With that, I am very pleased to introduce Feliza Cassano, Marketing and Publicity Director at Lanternfish Press, our moderator for today. So Feliza, welcome. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Anju. And thanks to everyone for joining us today to have brunch with Lanternfish Press and 4 of our authors. As we said before, I'm Feliza Cassano, she, her, and I will be asking a lot of questions. And if you have any questions for us, we would love to hear your questions because all of us really miss people. We really miss people. So feel free to just pop questions into the Q&A using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So first up, I'm going to have each of our 4 authors introduce ourselves. So the first author that we're going to have joining us is Caitlin Chung, the author of Ship of Fates. Caitlin, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about a little bit about who you are and tell us about Ship of Fates.
Hi, everyone. Caitlin Chung. Thank you for having me. I'm from Oakland, California, so it's a touch earlier on the coast. I moonlight as a middle school teacher where everyone is at their prime. I'm a proud owner of an emotionally withholding cat who has decided to linger right over here and might make an appearance. And Ship of Fates is my first published work.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. We will probably, when your cat shows up, you will have to do a second introduction. All right, and next up is Charlie J. Skew, author of Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark.
Hey, everybody, and thanks so much for having me here. My name's Charlie Askew. I am an author from Columbus, Ohio. I've written 2 books. One is Judges Worth the Lightly Still, and the other is Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark, which is recently now available on audio, which is awesome. And I am a assistant editor of fiction at Break Bread Literacy Project, an awesome nonprofit. And yeah, I am excited to drink and hang out with fellow authors of my LFP siblings.
Great, we're really glad to have you. You are an absolute delight. All right, so third author also joining us from the West Coast is Stacy Flood, author of The Saltfields, which just came out in March, so that you don't get to say that about your book, Stacy.
That's my thing. So hello everyone, I'm Stacy Flood. I'm up in the Seattle area, as Feliza mentioned, and I'm a playwright in the local area, but also I was so happy to have the Saltfield released this year, and so happy to be here at the festival. So, thank you.
All right. Oh, I did ask you to tell us a little bit about your books, not just about yourselves.
Oh, right.
So,
okay.
Stacy, tell us a little bit about the Saltfields, and we'll back up.
Not a problem. So, the Saltfields takes place in 1947. It's about the Great Migration of a lot of African Americans from the South up to the northern cities, and it's about 4 travelers on a train who make that journey and what happens to them along the way.
All right, Charlie, tell us a little bit about Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark.
Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark is a satire about a Black superhero who gets struck by lightning and tries to use his newfound electric powers, which is obviously the most original superpower for a Black character ever, in order to join a higher purpose. But he finds that he may have to let go of some of himself to do so.
All right, and Caitlin, tell us a little bit about Ship of Fates.
Ship of Fates is a fairy tale of sorts set in Gold Rush, San Francisco. It follows multiple generations of women as they struggle through a curse tied to the origin and discovery of gold in California.
All right, and our fourth panelist, who is joining us from Philadelphia, is Matthew Vesely, author of Elegy for the Undead. And Matthew, you don't get out of introducing yourself and your book, both of them at
I can do
once.
both at the same time.
Both at once.
Hello. My name is Matthew Vesely. I am author of queer fiction from right outside of Philadelphia, so on the main line, far enough where Philly will not claim me, but I will claim Philly. And yeah, I write queer fiction. I'm the author of Elegy for the Undead, which is the tale of two husbands, kind of before, during, and after the tragic events of this monstrous virus outbreak, and kind of how they're finding the intimacy and disaster. It's part romance, part gay love story, part horror, yeah, part literary fiction. It's, buy it. Elegy for the Undead, hello.
Great job. And Elegy for the Undead is also available as an audiobook at this time. Missed one. All right, so since it's brunch, we all know what brunch means. So why don't you all tell me what you're drinking?
Well, I brought tea this morning. This is pu'er tea. It's a Chinese very dark dim sum tea, which is Chinese brunch. I brought this because Ship of Fates has a story and a story structure, and the outward structure is a storyteller telling a story over tea. So that's why I brought this. In my family, this is known as old man tea because it is fragrantly earthy, which also somewhat ties into the book. Cheers.
And even if it was early for me, I just went straight to drinking. So I
That
figured, why
brunch
not?
life.
Yeah, why not? So I'm having an old fashioned essentially, which is whiskey, bitters, sugar, and also though I put some honey on the rim and some salt, and I have a slice of a blood orange because that has a lot to do with the theme, and it's called Salt on the Rails. I got that from a friend of mine. So cheers, people.
Is perfect. For those of you who haven't read The Saltfields, much of it takes place on a train in
Yes.
like one little train car.
I decided to go with a whiskey sour that did not look anything like this when I first started making it. Thankfully, my wife was my superhero and saved the day and made it look. It is Donald's favorite drink, which is mostly because he likes to pretend to be super manly, but also have a dash of something to cool it off without having a minute.
And I went through a couple iterations of drinks before this. Originally, I was going to do something with like a mimosa or a mojito with lilacs coming out because that's the couple's favorite flower. And then I realized you can't just walk into a store and find lilacs. So I went with something called the Purple People Eater, or as I would like to call it, it is the Lilac Lover Devourer. Fantastic.
What is in it,
Yeah.
Matthew?
Okay. I'm going to sound uncultured because I can't pronounce half of these things. It's, well, vodka. And then it's blue cacao. I definitely said that wrong. Sweet and sour mix. and the thing that goes into tequila sunrise, but is not the red thing.
Tequila.
No,
And not tequila.
Grenadine.
Menadine. Yes, that.
Yeah, good.
And sugar on the rim.
All right. So now that we have the brunch part out of the way, let's talk about the books. That's why we're all here, is books. I mean, like, maybe you're here for brunch. I don't know, but we're going to talk about books anyway. So starting at the beginning, books change a lot from the time they're acquired and up to publication days. So what's one thing that didn't make it into the final version of your book that you wish had made it, even if you know why it didn't make it?
I have almost no memory of backdrafts, so I can't even really speak to that. I do remember there was one part that I liked, and it was like, this is a little too Gabriel Garcia Marquez straight bite, so had to cut that one.
I have plenty. Rather, I have the exact opposite story. So when I was you get the call from Lanternfish Press and they say, hey, we want to publish your story. And I said, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Hype that up for a hot second. And then it dies down. Publishing is typically slow. And then Christine, our wonderful editor, comes in and she says, hey, here are your edits. For me, I had a very lucky experience of, there wasn't anything like, we're going to cut this whole section or we're going to cut all of this. It was like, we're just going to make some basic structure or skeleton line edits kind of thing. And she gave me this paper and I said, oh my gosh, I haven't really looked at this page in a while. I should do my own edits. Don't do that as an author. So she gave me this and she said, just go through, review, kind of answer my questions about things. And I did that. And then I also kind of did my own bigger edits to things of I want to change this whole section or I want to change this. And then I gave it back to our editor and she said, Matt, what the hell? Obviously, which I get. And then we had to do another round of edits because of that. So for me, it was less of things that got cut that I wish were in and probably things that were in, which probably were not in the first place, but I was happy to get the chance to add them in, happy that Christine let me add these things in.
Yeah, for me, it was just this one weird. I mean, I don't think there's anything that didn't make it in that I would have wanted to, but there was this one section towards the ending with a fish tank, and it was really long. And when I read it over now, because I do have all my backdrafts somewhere, when I read it over now, I wonder why I had it in there to begin with. And it was just really long, like a really long reflective fish tank scene, which always works in literature. So I'm glad that I kind of got cut.
For me, well, there's one that didn't actually get quite written because it was right when everything happened in Charlottesville. I was like, I emailed Christine hey, this is so crazy. What if I make a chapter that just breaks away from the book and Spark goes to Charlottesville, it does this, it does that. And she was like, no, I totally get you, bro. But we're in final edit mode. And then I love that she signed off at the end of the email, F Nazis, Christine. So that was probably I was sad, but only because I didn't have time to, not that it was actually something that was removed, but yeah.
A lost potential, right? All right, so we actually do have a question from Zachary. And this is a question, there's a question for the panel and then one specifically for Matthew. For the panel, what's your opinion on telling a story out of order? And for Matthew, how did your book benefit from jumping around the story to different points? So Elegy is told kind of with parallel timelines, I think is the best way to describe it, yes? I think also for other authors who also have kind of the element of the story being nonlinear, what is your opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, I can start, definitely. So the way that I prefer to write books, I would say a lot of my books are very out of order. A lot of the stories that I write will come out of order because I like to write books instead of like a chronological order, I would call it the emotional arc of the story. And the way that like so like in life is not just one big story. It is like many, many stories that are put together. So for me personally, when I was writing Elegy is the story of kind of before this big outbreak and like how they're like this couple's love kind of develops and changes and like a relationship starts and then how it then faces a big zombie outbreak and then how that then affects them afterwards. So I wanted to follow the emotional story arc and kind of put all three of those stories together and like break from one to the next and kind of like tell the beginning of one arc and then the beginning of the next and the beginning of the next and make it all one beginning in Elegy for the Undead and then kind of keep going through that structure. So like as you're following all three of these story arcs, you're getting like an emotional ride through all of them that feels cohesive instead of just here's like the climax of Act 1 and then blank and then the climax of Act 2 and then kind of going again, the climax of Act 3 and then going again. So me personally, structurally, I prefer that in my book, so I put it into mine.
I tend to write backwards. So I have this like, oh my God, this is so cool. She's stuck in the crow's nest on a ship. And then I have to be like, okay, how? Like, how did we get here? So I always kind of do this and then go backwards to find the origin story. I love origin stories and myth and fairy tale. And that's just how my brain works. And I have an image and then I have to explain or justify how we even got there. I love a book that jumps around in time. I think that the revelation of information can be manipulated in really interesting ways. Like in Elegy, you know, it's not only chronologically, but different, like Feliza said, parallel stories. So you get these like bits of information from one side, and then it'll come up much later, and you're like, oh, this is the same piece from this other point of view, but well down the book. So I really, really enjoy the kind of freedom of jumping through time. And I really like what you said about the emotional arc, the emotional story. That's an awesome way to put it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that idea of like the emotional arc, because there's some things where like in the linear story that you're telling, you're not exactly like evoking the emotion of the character, but if you're writing something that's non-linear, you can kind of pull from something in the future, kind of Doctor Who it out of where it is and kind of put it where you want your readers to see it. With Spark, I wrote it as a frame narrative, and part of that was just because I've always enjoyed that type of story where you feel almost like like there's an assurance that the author knows where we're going, in that it's fixed in time, so it's not like like there's room for things to happen within the tale, but ultimately kind of where we're going to be ending up, and I kind of always enjoyed stories like that. And I also enjoy that that's how people tell stories like in real life, because sometimes, like, I don't know, like if you ever have that uncle that just like goes on for like hours and sometimes like mixes one story up with another, or like oh wait, no, that was in like '07. Yeah, the story I'm telling is '03. Like, like that type of dude. And I just love stories like that because they feel more like something that you can connect with easier, I think.
I love that you say that. I love that you say that, because specifically it makes me think of like, I think that the best place to start a story is to think about like, what is the authorial POV? So where is the narrator telling it from? Spark does that so dang well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true, very true. But I think also like Matthew was mentioning, just for elegy, it was just the way in which it gets that emotional resonance as you learn things from the past, right? So that's the true arc, that's the true theme that's going on here. So I don't think it would work really, just being a linear as well as it does going back and forth, because when things happen within there, I don't want to give anything away. But when things happen in there, like it hits right there at that moment. It's like, oh, now I understand what these characters are going through. Now I understand what's going to happen next a little bit more clearly. So yeah, I think it's beautifully done that way. For mine, I just had an outline. I write pretty fragmented. Like I write a little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the middle, a little bit at the end, somewhat, and then when I finally have a completed structure in general, that's when I start. I oftentimes will have a 3-ring spiral notebook, and I will not start a piece, either it's a play or a piece of fiction, until I fill up that notebook. Then I know I have enough to actually start. So I have plenty of empty, half-filled notebooks here that I just never got around to go any further on. But for salt fills, it's just when I knew I had enough there to start, and I understood what the character's voice was. That's when I started up on there.
So more your writing process is non-linear than the storytelling.
Yeah, storytelling is pretty linear.
I have a question.
Huh?
Oh, you go.
I always start on paper as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, does anyone go straight for the laptop or the computer?
It's just too intimidating, man. Like I just see it, and you know what? I feel like, I don't know, like, because I've like written short stories that were like really booty, but like I did it when I was like in 4th and 5th grade. So like when I did that, like, you know, it was just fun. So I feel like writing in a notepad takes me back to that aspect of it, where it's like there's no expectation, there's no like anything. You're just having fun and writing something that, you know, at least one person likes, you know. So
I always do my brainstorming on paper, just because I can't, like, I did write a lot of elegy, like just the story wise on notebook paper, just because it worked for me then. But now it's like, as I'm writing like longer novels, I could never. The process of like writing out an entire thing on paper is time consuming. It's a lot. But I had a question actually, going off of what Stacy and Caitlin had said about like where they start their story and like create it non-linearly. Do you have any like pieces of stories that you're like, I know the ending to this story, I know exactly where it's going to end up, I got nothing else, and it's not going to be made because of that?
Oh yeah.
Process. That's the whole process.
right, yeah. So writing.
And what are they? And what are they? I want to know.
What are these amazing endings? Oh no, please, Stacey.
No, go ahead, Kelly. Yeah. Go.
I started that sentence and didn't know where it was going to end. Please take over.
I have something where I know it ends with 2 characters in a field with a gun.
I love that.
That's all. That's all I got. That's it. I know how they got there. I don't know why they did. Yeah.
So you know that the gun went off.
I don't even know if that happens. I don't even know. Yeah. I just know that they're there. I'm not that far into it.
That's it.
I mean, that's an exciting question to discover the answer to later, I suppose.
Yeah. I have one where it's just like, all I know is that in the end, there's going to be a carnival of completely queer people. A traveling carnival of completely queer people in an apocalypse. And I have no idea the story that goes in there or how it leads up to that, but that's it.
I'm interested in that book. I'll buy it.
Here.
Thanks. I'll write that one sentence on there and you can buy it.
On a notepad, please. Paper.
I know that I have one. I don't want to give away too much about it, but because I've like playing around with some of the beginning parts of it, but I do know that it ends with like a death battle at AWP. And
oh Lord.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait to finish working with that one.
Oh Lord. Oh Lord. All right, we do have a few more questions in the Q&A, and if the audience members have any other questions, We love questions, obviously. Pop them in the Q&A down at the bottom of the screen. So from Tony, question for everybody, and then a question specifically for Caitlin and Stacy, but for everybody. Do specific pop culture artifacts factor into your writing process or as points of inspiration or brainstorming for the story? Maybe Charlie would have an answer for this.
I mean, entirely. I feel like that would go to the research part too, but without diving too much into that, I feel like with my stuff, like it pulls so much from like the history, tropes, and just all around like aesthetic of comic books, that those artifacts are, you know, intrinsic in every part of Spark. So like between, not to mention like comic, like anime and video games and everything like that, I feel like pop culture is like if not the heartbeat, at least like it powers one of the valves of the book.
A lot of my plays and other stuff I pull a lot from pop culture and things like that, but not so much for this one because of the history and the research that I had to do. So for this one, it was just a lot of going through the area of the past, going through a lot of narratives and things like that for this one. But usually, yeah, I will pull from pop culture. I love doing it. I love the idea of how much it informs our, not just, of course, our current lives, but informs how we see things in the past as well. So yeah, I'll do definitely.
I know for me specifically, so Elegy is obviously, it's at its heart like a zombie book. And I think zombie narratives are so ingrained in our pop culture, specifically kind of in the, a little bit like kind of past of our pop culture. I think we're kind of moving past it a little bit. And I grew up with it and loved like movies, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, all those stuff, video games, Last of Us, Dead Rising, and was obsessed with this genre. And saw like the one biggest flaw I had with it was like, it's so hyper masculine. Oh my gosh, it's just kind of bam, 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 cut, slice, die. And while I was inspired by that, I was also inspired to change that. So that's why I kind of wrote Elegy as something that is an ode to those, the movies and the video games, the comics and animes that like really blaze that trail, like bring this whole subgenre of horror to the world, but then also a twist to it and like changing it up and making it like a lot more, I think, accessible to people, and a lot to people who don't like that kind of don't like that hyper masculine take on it, and to really like take that genre and turn into something that I would say is a little more pretty and like emotional and beautiful and has a little more soul to it, heart to it.
From a pop culture standpoint, it wasn't so much that I was using artifacts, but as even going back through and reading it, I will remember what music I was listening to.
Oh, totally.
It doesn't have anything to do with the story, but I'll go back and identify and be like, oh, this is when I was listening to cello covers of Justin Bieber. Like, I did.
They have those.
Drop the Spotify playlist in the chat.
Exactly, please.
So I will have that kind of connection that is hard to explain and has nothing to do with the story, but it is somehow tied. I think if I went back and listened to it, I could probably try to access that point in which I was writing.
I love that you bring up music, because yeah, there's like some moments or scenes like within my writing that always tie back for me to when like, it's like, I don't know, sometimes music for me, it kind of sets up the scene in my head, like, you know, as far as like there's a scene in like a project I'm working on now where there's two characters in a bar, and like I was listening to, it was like right when I'd first listened to Janelle Monáe's, it was from like her Electric Lady album. I just forgot the name of the song, but Dorothy Dandridge Eyes. And it's like a very like cool, jazzy, like you're being infatuated with this person type of vibe. And it like helped fuel me to like write that scene. So yeah, music sometimes it's like it's like the finisher, like when it comes to writing, like for me, as far as like a scene goes.
The second part of this question is specifically for Caitlin and Stacy. Both of your books are historical fiction. Does writing text set in history have you seeking out artifacts from those periods to help you kind of set the tone, or do you rock with anachronistic references either behind the scenes or in the text?
So I used to bartend in downtown San Francisco, and they were doing this huge project to move a train space station, and they were excavating like full square blocks. And a large portion of my clientele were the construction workers who were working on the site, specifically doing the digging, and they would bring in these things that they found deep in the earth, like a lot of glass soda bottles specifically, because there once was a San Francisco soda company, and these were all pre-1906 earthquake, and that earthquake just decimated the city. So there were all these things deep underground, and while they were doing it, they were starting to discover like whole ships buried, because the bay side of San Francisco is all landfill. So deep below, there were just completely intact ships. So there was a lot of discovery of that going on, and I can't pursue my own personal ship that was from 1890, but there were some really great articles written about it that I was just really drawn to. So that definitely had an impact on what I was working on, the kind of mythological piece of it. I mean, it's so strange.
Yeah, for me, coming from Buffalo, and I have my grandparents came up from South Carolina, from the area, and were part of that Great Migration. It was really curious about what they decided to take with them. So there would be these small trinkets, these small artifacts, these small things that they bring up with them, and I was just really taken by that. Like, other things to bring up, they may bring up a thimble, something like that. Say like, why would they bring that, or why would they bring just a pocket knife, or they would bring up like almost like a cheese grater, something really small like that. So what they decided to carry with them, and what was important, really informed how I looked at that journey and how I view that journey within the book as well, to see that what one can take with them and what that importance was. So there was a few things that they could carry on what they decided to take. So that kind of just informed what I decided to have the characters carry with them as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's in Saltfields, with the quilt. And it would personally stress me out when he left the quilt. Like, I'd be like, no, you can't do that. So I see that, and I was very drawn to this quilt because it has a very like deep security blanket security thing tied to it, and going through this like journey, this very scary journey, to have that. I definitely see how that kind of played into your novel.
It
Yeah,
actually has a very natural metaphor.
Yeah.
Very natural, impactful. It was like, oh yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that I think that if you were to ask them, it were practical things to take. They were just simply being practical, but there was definitely an emotional connection there that they wanted to bring up with them as well. So items like that kind of helped inform it.
All right, so kind of on the topic of research, all of you clearly had to do different kinds of research while working on your books. What are some of the most interesting things that you learned during that process?
For me, it was the price of a phone call. So it's the little thing that you write in there where you're like, how much would a phone call have cost in 1947? How much would a phone call in that area would have cost in 1947? Like, what would the payphones be like? What would the connections have been like? What would the phones themselves look like? So just little things like that. I was like, that took so long to try to find that out. One of the things I was thinking to myself, should I cut that scene? Because it just took so long to find out. But little things like that, like just learning what the seating situation in the train car would have been like, and all those little things. What the platform, especially difference for whites than for African Americans, what that platform difference would have been. So small things like that was a point of discovery for me.
That's so interesting. Do you remember how much it costs?
It depended.
No.
Yeah, like where you were. It was, I think it's 20 cents. But if you were inland, I think from the south, it may have been 15 cents. And depending upon like where you were, it could have been as little as a nickel. Yeah.
It's like when they used to charge for text messages.
or you had your evening hours for your calls, so you had like you had your day calls and your night calls.
Yeah. So. Or long distance calls used to cost money.
Yeah.
Matthew, you're making the most interesting face.
I don't remember any of this. Sorry. I kind of remember in like middle school was the time of like, oof, I need to have like call me on my, like I need you to call me after a certain time,
yes,
because that's when like, the account was free, and that's the only number I have. And I acknowledge that as a me problem.
Oh man. When it comes to research, like I learned so much. Like part of that's like a lot of the fun for me is like finding out all these like new facts, particularly about electricity, because I studied a few random, like not random, but like just different topics that don't necessarily intercede other than like within like the context of my story, because reading about like Lichtenberg layers and how like electricity really affects the human body, because like in order to satirize, I wanted to bring a level of realism to the origin story and to just the science behind like his powers and everything like that. So one of the funny things I found out was when I was researching, like, okay, I have to have like a funny reason for like him to have electric powers, because that's part of the joke is, Black superheroes get electric powers for some reason all the time. And when I found out that melanin is a super producer of electricity, I just kind of was like, wow, that's just, you can't like make this stuff up. And then between reading Nikola Tesla's book a few times now, just because like I wouldn't have read that without researching for Spark, so that was just awesome to do. And then just some of the history of advertising in America when it comes to like how Black bodies are used is just kind of wow, like mind-numbing. Like the fact that Afro Samurai once had a coupon inside of their video game for Church's Chicken, of all things. The fact that Resident Evil had a Club and Shiva outfit where their Black character had a leopard print going out to the club look as a downloadable option, because that's what you want to hunt zombies in. And yeah, just other bitty things that just like were just for satire, but yeah.
You just brought back memories of that. I remember that specifically, Shiva's outfit, and looking at that and saying, no. I'm good, thank you.
Right? Yeah, like,
when it comes to me, my research was a lot of, I think I was a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to how viruses work and how vaccines work and how viruses are spread. A weird coincidence that this was publishing this book and then COVID. But I did a lot of research specifically. Okay, so actually, my very first draft that I submitted to Lanternfish Press had this virus that would eventually become the antivirus for like that to turn people into zombies. Was extremely underdeveloped to the point of where that was like the biggest thing where our editor said, hey, this is the thing that we need to address the most and making sure that this is realistic. So it kind of gave me an excuse to kind of go through and say, let me research how viruses work. And the way that they wanted to do it was, I always knew that like this was Elegy for the Undead is meant to be a very big metaphor for addressing like actual real life viruses, HIV, cancer, or cancer not really a virus, but like HIV and then COVID, I guess now. But I had to do my research and how did like the virus of HIV work? How did like different viruses that would spread, like would they spread through the air? Do they spread through blood? Like how does that work on a cellular level? How does it like spread quickly? And like what does that, if it spreads quickly, what does that mean for the makeup of the virus? And it was a lot of doing that work for myself to make sure that like the actual world building that I was doing in Elegy for the Undead with like, or I guess world destroying that I was doing in Elegy for the Undead was realistic, and like people who did know viruses could look at it and say, oh, that makes sense. And people who maybe have lived through a national or international pandemic would look at it and say, oh, that makes sense.
What? So just like on that point, what about the pandemic and Elegy is different from this?
Well, we got a vaccine a lot faster in Elegy.
That's true.
I wish we could have done that. But we're here.
Right.
Yeah, I think I was a little hopeful in the vaccine line in Elegy.
How about you, Caitlin? What was the most?
Well, I did a fair amount of research, particularly about Chinatown in San Francisco, but far more of my time was spent kind of distorting the history of it to mythologize it. So I kind of lost sight of like the reality of what my research was telling me and kind of just how to bend it to what I wanted it to be. I don't think that answered the question posed, but that is my answer nonetheless.
All right.
You knew the history so you could break it.
Yeah,
That's true. You have to know the history to know how to bend it before it breaks, right? All right, so I do have another question from, this one is from an anonymous viewer. What has your experience been like publishing with a small press? And as a reminder, if you're watching, you can pop other questions that you have down in the Q&A down at the bottom of the screen. And this one's open to anybody, so feel free. I think, Charlie, you've been with us the longest.
Yeah, no, I mean, I gotta say it's like wonderful in the sense that it feels like it's, I don't know, it's more like a team, like, you know, like a Marvel team up where you're all like working on a project together, like, you know what I mean, versus like this is how it's going to be. This is like, I could go on and on about how like awesome it's been being a part of a lot of decision-making aspects when it comes to like, hey, like Charlie, here's like what we got for like the cover so far, things like that. And it's like it makes you feel included, and it makes you feel like you're not just selling something that like is basically like a Horcrux of you and just giving it away. Like you're not just like yeah, it feels like you're still a part of the project, which I think is important. That and like, I don't know, it just like I've hung out like at Amanda's house and like chilled with like Feliza and Christine, and it's like, you know, it feels like you're more part of a community versus what I'm, of course, not entirely sure, but what I feel like a bigger press would be like, where it's more of a mass printing of let's get this out.
Yeah, when Lanternfish first contacted me, it was for a revise and resubmit, which I think is very special to small presses. Feliza specifically, you know, the willingness to see the potential in something instead of just a quick, like, not ready, is definitely a characteristic of small presses. Thank you, Feliza.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, besides the obvious like business benefits that you get from it as like an author who's like entering this kind of business contract with a publisher, besides that whole thing of like, you get a little more, not, I guess you get a little more like interaction with it. But also on a personal level, I want to talk that there's a lot more personal benefits to it of like, I feel like I can talk to Feliza about anything. I can just walk up and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this. And she'll be like, totally, let's talk about it. I feel like I could talk to my editor about anything. It's not just like her saying, it's not just Christine saying, make this change and do it. It's like, hey, can we talk about what this change would be? Especially towards the end of the editorial process, there were certain things that like, we weren't disagreeing on, we were just still kind of questions up in the air. And she could have very easily said, change it to what I want, period. But there was an open conversation about it, which you won't really get in big presses, understandably, because they're working with 1,000 different books. But because it's like, you feel a little special, you get to kind of have those conversations. And same with like anyone else in the business. It's like you feel like their top priority, and that's it's a big personal benefit when working with somebody, to have that kind of special feeling in your heart, like, oh, I feel like I'm like on their priority list. They're not just another author. That makes you feel like you have this genuine relationship with them instead of just like a business relationship.
Yeah, it's just completely all of that. Yeah, I mean, it's been a fantastic run, been a fantastic ride for me. I mean, it's been all the way through through the editorial process, through the publicity process, all of it. It's really been great. I've been to some bookstores and they've even said, "Man, you're with Lanternfish. They're so cool. They're so good." And they've had ARCs in the back, like I have the newest ARC from them. So just knowing that, I mean, it's just really been a terrific ride and completely counter to what I've had friends experience at the bigger houses. I mean, the horror stories that you hear. And I was like, oh my goodness, is that gonna happen? But I had none of it. Yeah, none of it. It's been just a terrific ride all the way through.
I will say that we are all lucky that we have Lanternfish, not to like want to embarrass you too much, Feliza, because like I have heard some horror stories from some small presses, but usually those small presses are very I don't know, goal oriented. Like they're more like, I don't know, there are some bad experiences with small presses out there, but yeah, I feel like it's fewer and far between the stories I hear about them than I do with like larger stuff as far as like the interaction based stuff.
I think small presses and Lanternfish specifically can maintain an aesthetic. Lanternfish is all about the rare and strange, and it's bringing together very, very different stories, but also maintaining this thread that makes all of us like connected, and just a really, really strong, clear aesthetic. Yeah,
I think, as you could probably tell from the panelists, we have books that tend to be that seem very different from each other, but in a lot of ways touch each other or kind of cross over in terms of themes or ideas. And that's one of my favorite things about working here. I don't know about 4 of you. All right. That is it for our Q&A. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but one thing, because Caitlin asked this when we did our quick run through, Stacy, before the publication of the Saltfields, your first real, like a lot of your writing experience has been as a playwright. How do you think your experience writing for the stage has influenced your prose work?
A lot, especially when it comes down to the use of dialogue of it and making sure that the dialogue in the way it is structured to try to advance character and advance story. At the same time, being that a lot of it does take place in it's just that train car, right? And it's just with these 4 characters, making sure that I'm driving themes with just that small cast, essentially. So I'm just used to not having a larger palette of characters to work with, so just kept it really, really compact in that sense. Also, when I thought about scenes, I thought about just one scene leading to the next, and theme to the next, and leading to the next. I thought about it in that sense, like, okay, well, what does this scene drive to the next scene? How does this add to the next scene? So very much in that sense, when I thought about this, I did think about the play work as well.
I didn't know about the playwriting when I read Saltfields, and it it actually kind of surprised me because there's so much lyricism and poeticism in the prose itself that it made sense when you told me in like the container, you can translate to the stage, but my first reaction was like, nah.
Thanks. Yeah, because I wanted this to be almost like a completely different type of skill set. Essentially, yeah, I wanted it to be something completely different in that sense. But a lot of the playwriting did try to kind of inform the structure. So I want to keep that in mind too. But yeah, I was like, I had a chance to really be a lot more lyrical here. So like, why not take that opportunity that I could in plays, unless I wanted to do it in stage direction, which no one would ever see it or it never would come out. But yeah, it's great to be able to do it here.
And in the salt fields, you see so much of ministers' kind of interior life, which you wouldn't be able to do on the stage. Like you can't just have somebody like, here I am thinking some thoughts.
The whole soliloquy to the side for a good 20 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, can you even imagine delivering a 20-minute soliloquy?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, have at it, people.
It's called musical theater.
Oh, that's true. Exposition.
Yep. Opening number.
And do the four of you have questions for each other about your books or about your writing process? Again, we're taking questions down in the Q&A down in the box at the bottom of the screen. If you have any pressing questions in the audience.
Well, I know Matthew's brought it up in previous conversation, which I just loved. Who would we take to brunch? Which characters do we want to have brunch with? I'm going to start. I want to have brunch with Minister's grandmother. I have a real thing for hedge witches, and she definitely has like a witch doctor thing going on. I mean, she knows all the secrets of neighbors and nature, and like, I want to pick that brain.
Cool. For me, it would be in Simple Fates. It would be Madame Toy. I'd probably lose money. I'd probably I may even lose like some trinkets or something, but just that experience, like, you know what? I just want to sit down and kind of just have a conversation or one-on-one with that person to see what came from it. So yeah.
For me, I think I would say Lyle from Matt's book, just because he seems so down to earth, and also I love how much experience he's been through, but how it doesn't seem to have really I don't know, destroyed his optimism. I mean, I know it's a bit much to because it's not very I don't feel like his optimism is very on the surface, but you could tell it's there with how he how he takes care of his partner and how he I don't know, his romanticism and stuff. I think that he would be somebody that I would just enjoy drinking with and just talking about how much the world sucks, but that it isn't fully gone.
I would
Follow-up
question.
Follow-up question for both of you then. Would it be, so for reference for everyone, Lyle is one of the husbands that is, not spoiler because you know this in the very first page, is that he is then infected with the virus. So it's he's kind of slowly turning and throughout the third part of the book. And would you want to, are you talking before that? When he's getting really angry, or when he's just
we can have a Shaun of the Dead kind of thing, we're at the end, it's just chained up, and I'm just he's
I would say before, especially, in the beginning, it's so sweet to watch a friend fall in love. And he's kind of, he's a little hesitant. He's not sure. And I kind of would want to be at the brunch. So it's no, go for it.
Yeah. Like the best friend in the rom-com. Yeah, I would be that person. Yeah.
I'll be supporting cast.
Honestly, they have the best lives. They're usually they're the ones that have their stuff together.
Me personally, I would want to have brunch with the protagonist of your story, Charlie, Donald, who is the man with superpowers. Specifically, I would want to have brunch with him in the very beginning, like right after he gets his powers, and he's just really excited to like show off his powers. But like Kat and all are just like, oh, cool. I would be the hype friend. I would be the hype person. I would be like, this is amazing. We need to go like to a junkyard and see what's possible here. I'd be the sidekick.
Yes,
I'm ready.
yeah, that would be dope. Yeah. Very hard.
So I would also want to have brunch with Donald, mostly because I want to be like, Donald, here's the thing. I know that you think moving to a big East Coast city is going to solve all your problems. I did it. It's not. Don't think it'll fix everything. You still got to fix things yourself. I promise it'll be okay.
I want a brunch convention of true believers.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, I'm saying it out loud. It's like, I want to have brunch with everybody who's read your book. But
also, for reference, true believers is like his groupies. Yeah, that's what I say.
I think that's it for Q&A, and we are just about at 1 o'clock. So I think we'll get ready to close out. Thank you very much to the 215 Festival. So each of you, why don't you each of you tell us how we can find, how readers can find you online? And we'll start with Matthew, since he is at the end of the alphabet and hasn't had to suffer in this manner quite yet today.
Good, because when I was talking, this is the stuff that I was writing down to make sure that I knew what to say. Okay, so you can find me on social media pretty much everywhere. On Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Matt Here's a Who, like Horton Here's a Who, but Matt, musical theater. And you can find me on TikTok. I do a lot of gay and queer book TikToks at Matthew Vesely. And you can find me on my website, so you can see all of my books, all my projects that I'm working on, hopefully upcoming stuff, at matthewvesely.com. And you can buy Elegy for the Undead at all of your local bookshops, including Harriet's Bookshop and Novel Idea.
Stacy, we're going backwards, Stacy.
Oh yeah, pretty much same thing. So I'm easy to find online. It's just stacydflood.com, or social media is just Stacy D Flood at all the usual handles. And yep, Saltfield is available at great independent bookstores in your area. So please check it out.
I can be found on Twitter at CJ Askew. That's usually where I am a lot of the time as far as my social media goes these days. I do have a Facebook page as well, author Charlie J. Askew. I also have Instagram, which I like to post a lot about my cats and my dog and other stuff every once in a while. That is at author CJ Askew. If you look up Charlie J. Askew, though, you'll definitely find me. I have a website. The best way to find it right now is through one of those pages because it links there. I am currently having a bit of a dilemma changing my domain to something official that I've bought, but I am internet illiterate, so I am still figuring that out.
I am on Instagram and Twitter at Yellow Reading Chair. No mystery why. I am also I'm just not good at the internet. I also have a website, caitlin-chung.com, and I'm available wherever books are sold, and I'm gonna plug my local bookstore, great good place for books, shop local.
All right, and thank you again for everyone who is watching today. We're really excited to just sit down, drink some drinks, hang out. Again, you can buy all of our books. We really encourage you to visit the 215 Festival Marketplace partners, Harriet's Bookshop, and A Novel Idea. You can also support your favorite independent bookstore through Libro FM, where you can find Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark and Elegy for the Undead right now. And we are really, really excited to announce that on August 3rd, you will also be able to get the Salt Fields on Libro FM and anywhere else you buy audiobooks.
Woo! That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, I'm Feliza Cassano. I'm Marketing Publicity Director at Lanternfish Press. You can find us at at lfpbooks.com and at lfpbooks on all social media. So thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Part where I drink the rest of my drink.
Oh,
Hey, everyone. Okay, great. So I'm sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself. Thank you so much for attending Bottomless Brunch as part of the 20th anniversary celebrations of the 215 Festival. Thank you so much, Feliza, Charlie, Matthew, Stacy, Caitlin, and Lanternfish Press for publishing these amazing stories. This was so fun. I hope everyone had as much fun as I did in the audience and in the chat. It sounded like it through all of our little responses. I just wanted to share, I hope that each of you will keep up with the 215 Festival events all year long by signing up for our newsletter at 215festival.org. And if you enjoyed this event and the other ones during our festival, we would love for you to consider helping the festival and supporting us through a donation. You can find that URL on our website. And just a heads up, you will receive an email from the festival after this, just asking you for some feedback and a quick survey. So we'd really appreciate your participation if you have a moment. And other than that, I hope that you all are attending some of our other programming this afternoon. It is Festival Day and there's so many exciting events happening. And this evening, we will all be celebrating together at the Footnotes Literary Dance Party. I hope to see you there, either in the quiet room or chatting with us in some of the dance and music rooms. So with that, thank you. And bye, everyone. Take care, guys. We'll see you later.